Newark Liberty International Airport. The snow was light but enough to blur the glass panels of the concourse. Inside, the world was moving fast. Wheels clicking, children crying, suitcases rolling toward destinies. Olivia Langston didn't stop. She never stopped. At 39, she was one of the most influential women in global aviation, the CEO of Airbus, a name that moved with the wind in boardrooms from New York to Zurich. Today, she was scheduled to board a private jet for Davos, where she would speak on post-carbon infrastructure. Her assistant had already passed security. The gate to the private terminal was just ahead. But Olivia didn't take the final turn because someone, froze her mid-stride. Through the glass partition separating first-class commercial from private access, a man knelt down to tie a child's shoelace. His coat was cheaper now, his hair thinner. But there was no mistaking that jawline, those steady hands. Elijah. He stood up slowly, not yet noticing her. Beside him sat a girl, long blonde hair, eyes buried in a book. Another girl, still tying her coat, was laughing, pointing at a vending machine. Olivia's heart contracted. Her heels felt rooted to the polished floor. She hadn't seen those eyes in 6 years, but she knew them because they were hers. Ava and Leah, the daughter she had walked away from when they were only 2 days old. A voice crackled over the intercom. Flight 227 to Austin now boarding at gate C3. She couldn't breathe. Not because of guilt, but because every suppressed image came crashing through like a flood bursting a dam. 2 hospital bracelets, her own shaking hands signing discharge papers alone. The look on Elijah's face that last morning. Her eyes stayed locked on the girls. Ava flipped a page without lifting her gaze. Leah tugged at her father's sleeve. Elijah laughed, soft, tired, real. Then he looked up. They locked eyes. It was brief, seconds, maybe less. But in that space, Olivia felt it. A silent earthquake. He didn't wave, didn't blink, just turned away calmly. She hadn't expected a welcome, but she also hadn't expected the nothing. Her phone buzzed. Her assistant was texting. Jet is ready. They're waiting for your clearance. Olivia didn't move, didn't reply. The flight would leave without her. Let it. She stood still as the world kept moving, like she had stepped out of time. Finally, she turned, walked the opposite way, not back toward the private lounge, not toward the exit, just somewhere quiet. She sat in a corner of an empty gate, opened her phone, typed in his name. Elijah Ford. The number was still saved. It had survived 6 years of promotions, new phones, new passwords. Her thumb hovered over the call icon. She didn't press it. Instead, she typed a message. It's me. Then paused. No. Too open. Too careless. She deleted it. Typed again. It's me. She stared at it for minutes, then turned off the screen. On the return flight to Austin, alone on her jet, the hum of engines, her only company, Olivia sat in the dark and whispered to no one. They're not babies anymore. And for the first time in years, her voice cracked. Outside the window, the snow had stopped. But inside her, something had just begun to melt. The Gulfstream G800 landed back in Austin beneath a low gray sky. Olivia stepped out with no entourage, no press, no driver holding a tablet with her name, just her carry-on in hand, coat button, and silence. Inside her penthouse office, floor 48 of the Airbus Tower, she didn't speak to her assistant. She simply said, "No calls until I say otherwise," then closed the door. The city below looked like any other Tuesday, but Olivia stood frozen watching. Not the skyline, the reflection. Her own face had aged well, sharp, maintained, but her eyes were tired in a way no product line could correct. A soft knock. It was Cameron, her most discreet liaison. Former FBI analyst, now personal intelligence advisor on payroll. She didn't speak either, just handed over a charcoal folder. Cameron said only 2 words. He's in Salt Lake. Olivia sat down. The leather chair creaked beneath her. She opened the folder. First page. Elijah Ford, 42. Current occupation, part-time music teacher at a charter middle school. Income just above state minimum. Residence, small rental near Liberty Park. Medical, diagnosed 8 months ago, ALS, early onset. Olivia stared at that line longer than she meant to. ALS. A word too simple for a storm that big. She flipped the next page. Photos, one of Elijah walking with Ava and Leah after school, snowflakes tangled in the girl's hair. Another, Elijah seated at a keyboard in what looked like a music room, helping a boy with posture. His smile tired, his body thinner, his hands steady, but not as they used to be. Next image, Elijah asleep on a couch. Both girls asleep against him, one on each shoulder. There were mugs on the table. One said, "Best dad ever." The other just had a chipped heart on it. Olivia blinked and looked away. Her hand tightened on the edge of the desk. Cameron cleared her throat gently. "There's more." From a side envelope, she pulled out a scanned page, handwritten sheet music, half-scribbled lyrics beneath the staff lines. "I tried to build a song with what you left me, but the melody breaks where your name should be." The last line was left unfinished. A black ink pen mark hung at the edge like someone had stopped mid-thought. Cameron hesitated, then said, "It's from his journal. I traced it through a shared school drive. He uploads lyrics for the kids. This one was never submitted. Saved." Olivia didn't reply. She placed the paper down as if it were glass. Then she stood, walked to her office safe. She turned the lock carefully, removed a small box wrapped in dark blue linen. Inside were two envelopes. They had names in her handwriting. Eva, Leah. She had written them 5 years ago, meant to send them when the girls turned 5. She never did. She placed the letters gently next to Elijah's music, then sat back down, picked up her phone. The last message she had typed was still there. "It's me." Still unsent. She stared at it again like it might blink or respond, but the screen stayed still. This time she pressed send, not out of impulse, not from panic, but because she had run out of reasons not to. The next day, the plane touched down in Salt Lake City beneath a sky thick with gray. Olivia didn't leave the terminal for almost half an hour. She just sat there, coat draped over her arm, unread texts glowing on her phone screen, watching people rush by in coats and scarves, all of them looking like they had somewhere they belonged. The driver Paulina had arranged was holding a sign that simply read Miss S. She gave him a silent nod, stepped into the black SUV and pulled the door shut behind her. The cold air outside had teeth. The silence inside had sharper ones. She wasn't here to speak. Not today. Just to observe. The clinic was a small brick building near Liberty Park. Humble. Quiet. She waited across the street, parked behind tinted glass, breath shallow, heart ticking in an unfamiliar rhythm. And then she saw them. Elijah emerged first, leaning ever so slightly on the railing. Winter hat pulled low. The twins flanked him like loyal shadows. Ava on his right, Leah on his left. Each of them held one of his hands. Olivia didn't realize she was holding her breath until her lungs started to burn. Elijah paused at the sidewalk, looked both ways. Then he turned right, toward her. Their eyes met through 2 panes of glass in 6 years of silence. He didn't flinch, didn't wave, didn't smile, just stared. Lips tightening, not in shock, not in sadness, but in a kind of quiet, bone-deep recognition. The kind that said, "So you finally showed up." The car door opened before she realized she'd touched the handle. "Elijah," she said. It came out breathless. The girls turned slowly. Leah blinked in confusion. Ava froze, her gaze narrowing like she was trying to understand something her heart didn't want to accept. Elijah stepped forward, raising a hand as if to stop her right there. "You don't get to do this," he said, his voice firm but calm. "I'm not here to cause a scene. She hesitated. "I just wanted to see them. They didn't want to see you disappear, but that happened." His words hit like frostbite, slow and numbing. She looked down. The snow around the tires was slushed and gray, already dirty from the day. Just like this moment, nothing pure, nothing soft. "They don't need you to watch, Olivia," he said. "They needed you to stay." 6 years ago, there was no shouting, no drama, just 2 people speaking like adults who used to know each other's breathing patterns in the dark. Ava tugged Elijah's coat sleeve. "Dad, can we go?" He turned to her. "Yeah, let's go." The 3 of them walked toward the entrance. Olivia stayed behind. She didn't move. But just before the clinic door slid shut, Ava turned, not with anger, not with tears, but with a single look. Sharp, alert, and wet in the corners. A child who remembered everything. Then the glass swallowed her. The SUV carried a faint scent of citrus and shoe polish. Olivia stated the hotel name in a flat tone, then leaned back in her seat, her forehead resting against the window. She closed her eyes, letting it echo inside. Outside the window, Salt Lake drifted by in a blur of falling snow and red lights. But inside the SUV, everything was silent. And in that stillness, for the first time in years, Olivia cried without sound, without shame. Just one long exhale, and the cold taste of regret thawing behind her teeth. Olivia sat on the edge of her hotel bed. The hum of the central heater blended with the silence inside her. She hadn't cried, not since she landed in Utah. But something in the girl's laughter, that split second when it broke into digital silence, cracked her open in a place no boardroom ever reached. 2 days later, a text appeared on her burner phone. No name, just an address, just a time. If you're still here, the cafe hasn't changed. Still the same oak counter, still those dusty blackboards, still the off-key bell above the door. Olivia stepped inside slowly, her heels tapping against the tiled floor like a ghost returning. Elijah was already there. No coat, just a navy blue sweater she remembered folding once in another life. His fingers tapped lightly on the table. Rhythmic, restless. She nearly smiled. He didn't stand when she sat down, didn't ask how she'd been, didn't even look up. Instead, he slid a napkin toward her, handwritten, her name at the top. Just one question underneath. Why did you leave? She folded her arms tightly. Her voice, when it came, even surprised herself. Because I didn't trust myself to stay. His eyes finally lifted, met hers, not to search for lies, but for understanding. I had postpartum psychosis, Elijah. The real kind, the kind where you stare out a window and wonder if falling might quiet the noise in your head. Silence. I was afraid I'd hurt them, or you, or myself. I didn't want our daughters to remember a mother who scared them, who screamed in the middle of the night, who forgot names and didn't recognize her own hands. So I ran. He blinked slowly, then looked away, past her, toward a memory he refused to feed. You could have said something. You could have let me in. She nodded. I wanted to, but by the time I had the words, the silence between us was louder than the screaming inside me. The server arrived. Neither of them looked at the menu. Elijah ordered black coffee. Olivia didn't order anything. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Old, worn at the corners. This is the last thing I wrote before you left. He placed it between them. It was a piece of music, unfinished notes trailing off in measure 23. In the corner, faint pencil markings. I tried to finish it after you were gone, but nothing ever came. She touched the edge of the page. Do you still play? Sometimes, when they ask. Another silence. I'm not asking for forgiveness for the years I lost, she said softly. I just want to live the ones ahead, to make it up to Ava and Leah. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood up. If you're serious, Thursday morning at the ice rink, Ava and Leah will be there. Then he walked out. She stayed in the cafe long after the sun had dipped behind the mountains. At one point, the server offered to clear the table. She shook her head, eyes still fixed on the sheet music. It was Leah who suggested the skating rink. Not because she wanted to see Olivia again, but because she thought it'd be funny to see that woman try to stand on skates. Ava didn't protest. Elijah watched from a distance as Olivia nodded. The skating rink hadn't changed. Fluorescent lights flickered like tired memories. The air smelled of old popcorn, and a rusty banner still hung. Winter is where magic learns to balance. Olivia tightened her coat. She didn't feel magical. She stood by the bleachers, watching Ava and Leah lace their skates with a rhythm she didn't know. They were fast, confident. Elijah gave them space, leaning quietly on the far rail. Olivia's hands trembled as she picked up a pair of skates, rental, like everything else in her life now felt, and walked toward the ice. The first 10 minutes were humiliation on repeat. She wobbled, slipped, caught herself on the railing, and nearly fell onto a teenager carrying nachos. Leah giggled. Ava looked away. Olivia exhaled, smiled back, and skated again. Badly, but again. Then she noticed something small. Every time she fell and got back up, Leah's glances lasted longer. Ava's arms folded a little looser. They skated silently in a triangle. No words, just proximity. Later on the bench, Leah sat beside her with her skate off, rubbing her ankle. Her long brown hair was tangled, knotted near the back. Olivia instinctively reached to help. "May I?" she asked softly. Leah didn't answer, but she didn't move away either. Olivia turned slightly to face her. She tried to gather the hair like she remembered from YouTube tutorials. Left over right, then pull, but her fingers fumbled. She twisted instead of weaving. The braid looked like a defeated pretzel. Leah winced as Olivia pulled too tight. "Sorry, hold on." Ava's voice cut in. Olivia turned. Ava knelt down beside them, pulled a purple elastic band from her wrist and handed it over. Her face was unreadable. "Use this. It holds better." Olivia took it slowly, not blinking. "Thanks," she whispered. Ava stood back up. "It's for the braid," she said, "not you." There was a pause, then Olivia asked, "Do you braid Leah's hair often?" Ava shrugged. "Someone has to." "Makes sense." Olivia paused. "Do you mind showing me next time?" Ava didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. Leah tilted her head and examined her reflection on a phone screen. The braid was lumpy, half-formed, but done. "It's okay for a first try," she said, then added, "Don't give up." It was the exact phrase Elijah used the night Olivia left. Back in the car, Elijah was silent. The twins munched quietly on crackers from the vending machine. Olivia stared out the window, then gently a hand tapped her arm. "Leah." She handed Olivia a small folded paper. Olivia unfolded it with careful hands. It was a drawing, childish but warm. 3 stick figures stood on ice. One had a ponytail, skates drawn backward, arms flailing. The caption, "Mom's first try, still worth it." Olivia swallowed. She kept the paper, not in her purse, in her chest pocket, over her heart. Outside, the sky was the color of slate. The last snow flurries of March fluttered through the air like bits of torn paper. The car ride home was mostly silent except for the quiet crinkle of Leah's drawing as Olivia folded it again and again in her hands, as if smoothing the corners could slow her racing heart. That night, after the girls went to bed and the dishes were stacked quietly in the drying rack, Olivia stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window. In the reflection of the glass, she caught a glimpse of Elijah walking down the hall toward the bathroom. His posture just a bit slower than usual, his hand resting on the wall like he needed it. He didn't return. There was a thud, a wet, sudden thud, like someone dropping a stack of towels on tile. Ava's scream tore through the hallway seconds later. Olivia's feet slammed against the hardwood. She reached the bathroom doorway at the same moment Ava did. Elijah was crumpled near the base of the tub. One hand curled near his chest, the other twitching like it didn't belong to him. His face was pale, too pale, and his breathing shallow, fractured like broken glass. "Ava!" Olivia snapped, her voice steady in panic. "Get your phone. Call 911 now." Ava obeyed, no argument, just wide eyes and trembling fingers, dialing 3 numbers. Olivia dropped to her knees beside Elijah, whispering his name over and over, brushing damp hair from his forehead, checking his pulse like she still remembered how from a CPR class 10 years ago. "Stay with me," she begged, her voice breaking for the first time. "Please, Elijah, just stay." By the time the ambulance's lights flashed across the frosted windows, Leah was clinging to her sister, both girls wrapped in coats over pajamas. Olivia rode in the front seat, arms clenched to her chest, every mile feeling like an hour. The ER at Salt Lake Regional was cold and blue-lit, sterile in every way except for the human ache it carried. Elijah was taken straight to ICU for cardiac evaluation. The diagnosis came within the hour. Minor cardiac arrhythmia brought on by prolonged stress, underlying fatigue, and possibly dehydration. They were monitoring him overnight. Olivia sat in the waiting room while the girls slept on 2 connected chairs. Her heels dangled off her feet. Her hands were empty. No phone, no papers, no deals to review. Just her, just this. The nurse came out just after 2 a.m. "He's asking for you," she said gently. "And he said to bring the girls if they're awake." They weren't, but Olivia carried Leah in her arms and held Ava's hand as they entered the pale, humming light of ICU room 7B. Elijah looked smaller in the hospital bed. Paler, yes, but not just from the illness, from the years, from the weight of carrying too much for too long. "Hey," he said, a weak smile on his lips. "Thanks for coming." "I didn't hesitate," Olivia replied. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the air like truth. I left a meeting with the International Clean Water Coalition mid-sentence. Didn't even say goodbye. Elijah chuckled and winced. That's progress. Olivia nodded. She sat beside him. The girls were already asleep again, curled on the extra cot nearby. I don't know how much time I've got, he said quietly. No one ever does. But I do know this. If you've really changed, if you're really going to be here for them, for us, then don't disappear again. She stared at him. His eyes weren't accusing. They were tired but open. I won't, she said. I'm done running. Silence then. Good was it, he whispered, because they've just started to notice the shape of your shadow, and they'll miss it if it vanishes again. Around 4:10 a.m., Ava stirred and sat up. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and her mother's breathing beside Elijah's bed. She didn't say anything, just stood. And without waking Olivia, she walked over, took the light hospital blanket folded at the edge of the cot, and gently draped it over her mother's shoulders. Then she went back to her corner and lay down again. It was the first time she covered her mother in warmth, and Olivia didn't even move, but her fingers twitched slightly under the blanket, as if something in her chest had finally exhaled. Utah, early March. The hospital sent Elijah home 3 days later. His steps were slower now. His voice came out thinner, but somehow the house felt steadier with Olivia inside it. At 6:15 a.m., the coffee pot sputtered like it hadn't done in years. Toast burned on the second try. A pan of pancakes smoked up the kitchen as Olivia muttered something about griddle temperature lies. Alva walked in wearing 2 mismatched socks, staring like Olivia was a museum exhibit. Olivia grinned. Chef Disaster reporting for duty. Ava blinked, then silently opened a window to let the smoke out. That was how it started. Not with apologies, not with lectures, but with smoke. By day 4, Olivia was on the school pickup duty. On day 6, she forgot Leah's permission slip and had to walk back through the school hallway, her heels echoing like she didn't belong. On day 7, she argued with Ava over which sweater matched her snow boots. Ava won. But one afternoon, while putting away laundry, Olivia noticed something strange. At the back of Ava's closet, buried under old drawings and dried markers, was a taped-up shoebox. She opened it gently. Inside, dozens of sketches, crayon, pencil, even marker, all drawn over the last few years. Each one showed a family, some with 3 people, most with 4. And in every single one, there was a woman. Sometimes faceless, sometimes with glasses, once even wearing Olivia's signature white trench coat, but always standing close to the father and always holding the girl's hands. Her fingers trembled slightly as she flipped through them. The final drawing was different. It was Ava's hand for sure. The lines were cleaner, more certain, and the scene was cold. 4 figures standing under falling snow, 2 taller, 2 smaller. One woman had her arms around all 3. No eyes, no names, just snow. That night, Olivia didn't sleep. She sat by the dining table, sketch pad in front of her, hands unsure, lines awkward. But she tried to draw what Ava had drawn. The 4 of them standing together. She messed up Elijah's nose. She couldn't get Leah's curls right, but she kept going line by line until it felt not perfect, but honest. She taped it outside Ava's room just above the doorknob. The next morning, no one said a word. But when Olivia walked past the door that afternoon, her own drawing was gone. And on the inside wall, right above Ava's desk, it had been repinned beside the original crayon sketches. Later that night, she found a single slice of toast, butter slightly uneven, placed on a napkin sitting outside her door. No one claimed it, but when she looked across the hallway, Ava's door was open just an inch wider than usual. The following evening, Elijah stood at the kitchen window, holding one of the sketches in his hand. The snow outside was gentle again, falling the way it did that first day Olivia arrived. He turned to her, voice soft. You're closer now than you've ever been. A pause, and for the first time, I'm not afraid of what that means. Olivia didn't answer. She just sat beside him and let the silence fill in the rest. The local elementary school sent home a flyer. Elijah tossed it onto the kitchen table without much thought. Story day, parent volunteers needed, sign-up deadline, Friday. No one said anything. Leah munched at her cereal. Ava stirred hers absent-mindedly. Olivia glanced at the flyer, then folded it in half. Later that night, as she wiped down the counter, Olivia spoke without looking up. Maybe I could volunteer for story day. The silence that followed was heavier than any rejection. But then Leah said, you'd have to stand in front of the whole class. I know. Ava didn't say a word, but she didn't leave the room either. The next morning, Olivia signed the form, hands shaking, voice steady. Thursday arrived with the sky gray and a cold wind crawling through the playground. Olivia wore a cardigan she hadn't touched in years. It still smelled faintly of lavender. The library was warm. A group of 6- and 7-year-olds sat in a semicircle on the carpet, shoes squeaking, pages rustling. Olivia stood at the front, gripping a worn-out children's fable, one she had rewritten by hand the night before. It was a story about a mother fox who disappeared into the forest, not because she didn't love her cubs, but because the darkness inside her had grown too thick to see through. And how one winter, when the forest was quiet, she found her way back by following the scent of the cubs she never stopped missing. She read every word without trembling. When she looked up, she wasn't sure what she expected. But what she saw was Ava sitting cross-legged in the middle row, eyes locked on hers. The school day ended. Olivia didn't wait. She knew better now. She walked out quietly, letting the story linger on its own. She reached the sidewalk, the parking lot, the edge of the building when she heard footsteps running. Wait! Ava ran fast, her face red, her breath short, her backpack bouncing behind her. She didn't speak. She just wrapped her arms around Olivia's waist tightly, like something had finally snapped loose inside her. I don't need a perfect mom, Ava whispered. I just want a real one. Olivia didn't cry. Not right away. She only bent down and said, I'll be here, even on the days I don't know how. The table was quieter than usual. Spaghetti and garlic bread. Leah humming a song she learned in music class. Ava didn't say much, just pushed her food with a fork. But then she looked up. Can you make that fox story again next time? Elijah watched, silent. After the dishes were done, he pulled out a chair beside Olivia, sat down, then said without looking up, Ava hasn't used the word mom in 6 years. Not once. The room dimmed. The wind scratched faintly at the window. And Olivia said nothing, but her hands curled around the ceramic mug on the table tightly, as if grounding herself in the moment. Because for the first time, she belonged again. That night, after the girls went to bed, the silence between Olivia and Elijah wasn't empty anymore. It held something unspoken, something no longer shaped like resentment or regret. Elijah stood by the window, his hand resting on the curtain cord, the soft light from the street casting a line across his jaw. She hugged you, he said, not turning around. Olivia nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. She let me in. There was a long pause before Elijah replied, just don't leave through that door again unless you're sure. It was a gray Thursday morning when Elijah's final test results arrived. Stable, the doctor said, but you'll need regular cardiac monitoring. No skipped checkups, no skipped meals, no skipped life. Elijah chuckled and then winced at the irony. He had skipped too much life already. Back at home, Olivia laid out breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, sliced strawberries. She was different now. Not just staying, but choosing to stay. Leah dragged a chair across the floor and climbed up beside Elijah. Will you get better faster if you drink more orange juice? I think so, Elijah smiled. Ava didn't say anything. She just pushed her plate closer to Olivia. It was the quiet kind of trust, the kind earned, not claimed. Later that day, Olivia took the girls to school. On the way home, she made a detour. Not to an office, not to a boardroom, but to a quiet law firm on the edge of downtown Austin. She signed a document that had waited 6 years. That evening, after the girls went to bed, Olivia returned to the kitchen where Elijah sat with a small notepad and pen, scribbling chords that no longer quite matched the notes. She laid 3 things in front of him. 1, a folder, her official agreement to sell part of her heiress shares. 2, a completed music composition, the lullaby they once wrote together, now with a final verse only she could have added. 3, a handwritten note in Olivia's unmistakable cursive. I choose this family not because I'm scared of losing you, but because I finally understand what it means to love beyond fear. Elijah stared at the items for a long while, then softly, so you're staying. Olivia didn't answer with words. She pulled out a chair, sat down across from him, and for the first time in 6 years, she didn't look like a woman visiting her past. She looked like a woman rewriting her future. Still, he had to ask, not because he doubted her, but because his heart scarred and stitched together by single fatherhood, needed to hear it out loud. Are you going to run again? Olivia reached across the table and placed her fingers over his, just firm enough to be an anchor. No, she said, not this time. Elijah's eyes didn't well up. His breath didn't hitch, but something softened in his shoulders, like the moment when winter exhales and spring quietly begins. The next morning, Ava and Leah came downstairs to find their parents making breakfast together. Leah blinked, half asleep. Are we having pancakes because someone died or because someone's staying? Elijah laughed. Someone's staying. Olivia answered, pouring batter onto the griddle. Ava walked over, leaned her head against Olivia's back just for a second, and that second was everything. 6 months later, Austin, Texas. The fall air was crisp but forgiving. Evening light melted across the lawn of Zilker Park, where hundreds of chairs were arranged in quiet arcs around a makeshift wooden stage. Children ran barefoot through the leaves. Musicians tuned quietly behind the curtains of twilight. In the center row, Elijah adjusted the collar of his denim jacket. He hadn't worn a tie in years, and tonight wasn't the night to start. Olivia sat beside him in a cream scarf and simple black sweater, her fingers loosely laced in his. No jewelry, no logos, no armor, just skin, just warmth. Ava appeared first, poised, breath steady. Then Leah, slightly nervous, her bow trembling in hand. They stood side by side, a spotlight framing them in golden silhouettes. And then they began. The piano chords were familiar. Elijah's composition, reworked for strings and two voices. The lyrics were new. Olivia's words, their lullaby. You waited in silence. I built my sky with fear. You lit the windows. I disappeared. People stopped chewing, talking, checking their phones. Strangers held hands without meaning to. A baby nearby stopped crying. Elijah never looked away from the girls, but his hand gripped Olivia's tighter with every note. She leaned into his shoulder just slightly. The song ended with no applause, just breath. Then thunderous clapping erupted, standing ovation, phones lifted, strangers crying. But Olivia didn't see any of it. She looked only at her daughters and the way they were walking straight toward her. Ava hugged Elijah. Leah wrapped both arms around Olivia's waist and stayed there. You wrote the end, Elijah said softly, for a song we never finished. I found the ending when I stopped writing for myself, Olivia answered. He turned to face her. I waited 6 years for someone who knew how to stay, he said. I learned, she whispered. I'm still learning. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the scarf she had once left at his apartment, still smelling faintly of lavender and warm paper. He wrapped it gently around her neck. No more planes, no more meetings, just us. Then without cameras, without speeches, without rings, he held her hand and said the simplest thing in the world. Come home with the mother of your daughters. And she did. Not with a suitcase, but with a song, with 2 girls walking ahead, and a man who finally understood that sometimes love doesn't need to be rebuilt, only remembered and held and stayed. Thank you for watching until the very end of this story. If this journey moved you even just a little, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. We share new emotional true story inspired videos every day, each one deeper, more powerful, and more unforgettable. See you in the next.